Imagine for a second that you're running a massive, high-stakes United Nations treaty. Now imagine having to simultaneously hustle just to fund your own salary. It sounds wild, right? But it's a completely serious question. Do you have what it takes to navigate the incredibly rigid, highly formal levels of international diplomacy, while somehow also bringing the relentless, scrappy energy of a startup fundraiser?
Well, welcome to The Explainer. Today we're unpacking what just might be the most uniquely complex leadership role in the entire United Nations system, the Senior Coordination Officer, or Coordinator, for the UNEP Nairobi Convention Secretariat. We are talking about a P5 level role here, which is one of the absolute highest senior professional ranks in the UN system. It's based in Nairobi, and as we're about to see, it demands a staggeringly rare combination of skills.
So, here's our roadmap for today. First, we'll look at the impossible dual role. 2. Protecting the Western Indian Ocean. 3. The unicorn candidate requirements. 4. The contractual catch. And 5. Mastering the application process.
Let's jump right into part 1, the impossible dual role, or basically 2 jobs in 1.
This right here gets to the very core identity of the coordinator. You aren't just doing one job. You're essentially doing 2 radically different jobs at the exact same time. On one side, you have the formal treaty administrator. In this mode, you live in a precise, procedurally bound world. You're convening formal conferences of the parties, you're transmitting official notifications, and making sure that contracting parties actually follow the strict statutory rules of the convention. But then on the other side, you have to be a program manager. You have to fluidly flip into being this entrepreneurial, relationship-driven hustler. You're out there courting donors, pitching massive projects, and managing complex deliveries across multiple borders. The strategic guide is incredibly clear about this. Success literally requires an individual who can seamlessly bounce back and forth between these 2 totally different ways of operating.
Moving on to Section 2, Protecting the Western Indian Ocean, and why the stakes are so incredibly high. You might be wondering, why does this ridiculously demanding balancing act even exist? What's the actual mandate here? Well, the Nairobi Convention doesn't exist in a vacuum. It's a crucial pillar of UNEP's Regional Seas program. This is a massive global architecture established way back in 1974, and today it covers 18 conventions and 146 countries. The Nairobi Convention specifically is tasked with protecting the Western Indian Ocean. We're talking about a region with exceptional marine biodiversity, where entire coastal and island economies depend directly on healthy marine ecosystems to survive. And the threats are massive. You've got coastal habitat degradation, marine pollution, unsustainable fisheries, and of course devastating climate change impacts like sea level rise and ocean warming. You are basically coordinating the geopolitical response to save this entire vital ecosystem. Now, to actually keep the lights on and the Secretariat running, the coordinator relies heavily on the East African Trust Fund. This is the financial mechanism where the contracting parties, which are the member countries themselves, finance the core operations. And let me tell you, this requires some serious diplomatic tact. You serve these countries, yes, but you also have to firmly ensure they actually pay their dues according to the convention's financial rules. It's a bit like being a diplomat and a debt collector all at once. But it's not just about managing money, it's also about managing knowledge. The coordinator runs what's known as a clearinghouse mechanism. Think of this as a massive, centralized, highly accessible database of crucial marine knowledge. You have to make sure that all the scientific data, the state of the coast reports, and technical insights are efficiently collected, stored, and shared across the entire region. The goal is to make sure everyone, from top-level policymakers to on-the-ground researchers, has exactly the data they need to make evidence-based decisions.
All right, let's head into Section 3, the unicorn candidate requirements, or what we can call the 10-5-5-3 rule.
Looking at the strategic guide, I was honestly amazed by the highly specific, staggering matrix of experience required. You can't just walk into this job with generic environmental experience. First up is the 10. You need a solid 10 years of progressively responsible experience specifically in marine and coastal program management. It can be national, regional, or international, but it absolutely must be marine and coastal focused.
Next, we add 5 years of hardcore intergovernmental process experience. This means you have to prove you've been in the room supporting high-stakes negotiations, dealing with governing bodies, or managing a conference of the parties. You need to intimately know the procedural and diplomatic norms of international treaties.
Plus, you need another 5 years running massive, multinational marine environment projects. The guide specifically highlights experience with bodies like the Global Environment Facility, or the GEF. In these projects, you're juggling different implementing partners, complex timelines, and really rigorous results-based management frameworks. Just think about the sheer logistical headache of coordinating timelines across multiple sovereign borders and partners. That is exactly what this 5 years proves you can handle.
And brilliantly, you also need 3 years of proven success in resource mobilization. Remember that entrepreneurial side we talked about earlier? You need a real track record of actively raising funds from global funds, the European Commission, or bilateral government donors, just to actually fund the convention's mandate. It is one thing to know how to manage money, but it's an entirely different beast to actually convince governments to part with it.
So beyond those highly specific years of experience, there's the academic baseline. You need a master's degree in environmental management, environmental law, biology, or natural sciences, essentially environmental or legal mastery. You also need UN Level 2 English fluency across reading, writing, listening, and speaking. And ideally, some data analytics or data science skills to really round out your formidable unicorn profile. That data background actually connects directly back to successfully running that massive clearinghouse mechanism we talked about earlier.
Which brings us to Section 4, the contractual catch. It's time for a reality check. Here is the crucial point, the big plot twist behind this incredibly powerful P5 position. Despite having to meet all those massive, unicorn-level requirements, this is what the UN calls an FTA limited project role. The initial term? Just 1 year. As the guide strictly outlines, renewal is entirely contingent upon the mandate existing and the funding being available. Meaning, if you don't succeed at your resource mobilization responsibilities, your own job literally disappears. You have to build these long-term complex diplomatic relationships and massive regional strategies, all while navigating the stress of a funding contingent contract. And honestly, this brilliantly illustrates the risk even for existing internal UN staff. If you're an internal candidate and you take this job, you are reassigned or transferred without a lien to your parent position. In plain English, you give up the right to automatically return to your old, safe job. Taking this role requires a massive leap of faith and absolute confidence in your ability to keep that funding flowing. Finally, Section 5, Mastering the Application Process. Basically, the final trial. So, if you haven't been scared off quite yet, how do you actually conquer the substantive assessment and the competency-based interview to get this job? You will be rigorously evaluated based on a matrix of 5 core UN competencies. But here's the catch. You have to map these abstract traits to very concrete diplomatic actions. For professionalism, you must demonstrate innovative technical leadership. For teamwork, you have to prove you can support a group decision that is actually contrary to your own personal views, which is an absolutely vital skill in multilateral diplomacy. For planning, explain how you allocate your time across more than 20 distinct responsibilities. Under leadership, you aren't just managing. You must show the courage to take unpopular stands, drive change, and explicitly ensure gender mainstreaming across all policies. And for judgment, you need a track record of making tough, highly consequential decisions quickly in complex and ambiguous situations. You absolutely cannot just give generic, aspirational answers on the Inspira application platform. The guide advises that you must come armed with a highly structured inventory of specific, quantifiable career examples for every single one of these traits. If you're asked about judgment, you need a ready-to-go story detailing the exact data you gathered, the stakeholders you considered, and the tough call you ultimately made. Ultimately, it is an exhausting, exhilarating, tightrope walk of a job. You're safeguarding one of the planet's most critical marine environments, serving as a neutral diplomat to sovereign nations, and relentlessly pitching donors to keep the whole operation alive. Which leaves us with one final provocative question for you to consider. Do you have the diplomatic grace, the scientific rigor, and the entrepreneurial hustle to save the Western Indian Ocean and your own job? Thanks for joining me for this explainer, and I'll catch you next time as we decode another fascinating topic.